peer pressure as a target, to target a few things. And the first thing I'd want you to notice is that Satan will use this to target your concept of right and wrong. He'll use this to target your concept of right and wrong. You may be familiar with this passage or this part of the story in Exodus, but so that we're all on the same page and have a sense of context, let's think big picture for a moment. The children of Israel had served as slaves in Egypt for 400 years. And you remember that God raised up Moses, and eventually they were able to, because of the power of God, to be released from their slavery in Egypt. And they're not just going anywhere, they're going to the Promised Land. They're headed to Canaan. They don't know how to get there. They do not know where it is. And God is miraculously guiding them. Along the way, they come to a mountain whose name is Sinai. And you remember, hopefully, what happened on Sinai, and that is that Moses goes up on the mountain to have this time with God. And it was with this, or at this encounter with God on the mountain that Moses receives the tablets that have inscribed on them what we know as the Ten Commandments. Well, Moses wound up being on the mountain in the presence of the Lord for 40 days. But when Moses left the people there at the base to go up on the mountain, neither Moses nor the people knew how long he was going to be gone. And so as this chapter begins there in chapter 32, we just don't know at this point how long Moses has been gone. It's probably more than a couple of days. It may be a few weeks. And so Moses has been gone. The people, they're waiting to get on with this. They're ready to get back in the bus and start traveling, finally to get to the Promised Land. But Moses, he's gone. They're wondering, might something have happened to him? I mean, what if Moses is dead and we're just sitting here at the base of the mountain? I mean, are we going to sit here forever? Beyond that, they recognize, well, we need to do something. And so in verse 1, we're told that they go to Aaron. And it says, they gathered together to him and said, come make us gods that shall go before us, because Moses, we don't know what has happened to him. All right, so what's going on? You have a significant number of God's people coming to Aaron, who is Moses' brother. He's the next in line for leadership. In the absence of Moses, he's going to be the one in charge. They come to Aaron, their leader at this point, and they say, hey, Aaron, we need a God. How about you make us one? Because Moses, we don't know what has happened to him. And what does Aaron do? Well, ultimately, he does exactly what they have asked. They have pressured him, and so he does what they have asked. This is one of the earliest instances of peer pressure in the Bible. But what was going on then is the same type of thing that goes on today. But why was this so successful? One of the things I'd have you note is the phrasing of the words there in verse 1. It says, the people gathered together to Aaron. Now, it's just as easy and just as acceptable to translate the word to in Hebrew as against. And I think, quite frankly, that better captures what's going on. This group of people, perhaps numbering in the dozens or maybe even hundreds, they gather together around Aaron and they've come against him. Because they know they're asking him to do something that should not be done. They're asking him to do something that should not occur. But why are they asking him to make an idol in the first place? Well, again, if you think big picture, what have they been exposed to as a people for 400 years in Egypt? Well, the Egyptians were idolatrous people. They had all sorts of things that they had crafted with their own hands, that they offered sacrifices and offerings to. And so they had been exposed to, for generations, the worship of idols. And you've got to think at this point, the people were thinking, well, you know, Egypt's a pretty strong nation. In fact, Egypt was the most powerful, most wealthy, most influential nation on the face of the earth at this point. And they're probably thinking, well, it worked for the Egyptians. They were doing this. Look at them. Look how big their armies are. Look at the pyramids that they've made us build. Look at all the stuff that they have. They're worshiping idols. If it worked for them, well, why might it not work for us? And so they go to Aaron and say, we need us an idol like we had back in Egypt. And they're putting pressure on him. They're trying to get him to go with the tide and not against it. And so what does Aaron do? He says, all right, give me all your earrings. And so he takes those golden earrings, he melts them down, and out of this fashions a little golden calf for them to worship, supposedly as a god. Now, this leads us to the important question, which is, why did Aaron do this? What led him to do such a thing? Well, you've got to recognize that Satan clearly was at work among the Lord's people that day. And he had Aaron in his crosshairs and was trying to get him to do what God had forbidden by using the weapon of, the tool of, the instrument of peer pressure. And notice, first of all, that this happens in the absence of Moses. Had Moses been there, odds are this is not something that would have happened. Moses would have said, "You crazy bunch of loons, that's not going to happen on my watch." But in the absence of accountability, Aaron goes along. That's an important lesson for us. Sometimes you cannot control whether there is someone around you that will hold you accountable, but you can understand this. If you intentionally evade those, if you are intentional about separating yourself from those that will hold you accountable, that will hold your feet to the fire, you are treading into dangerous territory. This happened, first of all, because Moses was gone. But then notice why it happened, or how it was so successful in Aaron's mind. Why this peer pressure worked. I believe the answer for that is simple. The people, and I don't believe the full discussion is given to us there in those verses, but I believe the people are saying, "Aaron, we need an idol." And they knew what they were. Aaron knew what they were because for 400 years they had been exposed to them. This is not a new concept. And you've got to recognize that as part of their push, they're saying, hey, it worked for the Egyptians. If they're worshiping idols, and if that's supposedly bad, why are they still so strong? Why do they still have so much money? Why do they have such massive armies? You know, if this was really bad or really that bad, don't you think God would have gotten them? Maybe there's something to this. And so what you see is that Satan is working through this avenue of peer pressure to soften and to affect Aaron's concept of what is and is not right. What Satan did then is exactly what he will seek to do through the avenue of peer pressure in your life, which is to soften your confidence and to lessen your view of what God has said is right and what God has said is wrong. And one of the greatest ways that he does this is, and you've heard this and your kids have said this to you, hey, everybody's doing this. You've got to think the crowds that came to Aaron that day said, hey, all the Egyptians are doing this. It can't be that bad. In fact, if they're doing it and they're okay, it must not be bad after all. Satan used peer pressure then, and he uses it today to target your concept of right and wrong. He'll say, hey, everybody else is doing it, so that you soften your position, and then you start going with the tide instead of going against it. There's a park that I regularly take our boys to that's just, I don't know, a half mile from our house. It's over off Market Street. And this particular park has a creek that runs through one complete side of it. And about half the time the creek has some water in it. It's the days after it has rained. Sometimes it's dry, but it's kind of overgrown. There's a lot of poison oak and poison ivy. It gets kind of deep, and there's some big rocks around. And I don't want my boys in there because I don't want them muddy if it's wet. I don't want them to get poison oak or poison ivy. And with those big rocks, I don't want them jumping across this and busting their head open. And so what I have told them is, I want you to stay away from that creek. And by and large, that seems to work pretty well, unless, of course, there are other kids at the park. And I can't tell you how many times this has happened, especially if there are older boys at that park. And I don't know what it is, because I'm a guy. And guys, we're just not that bright, are we? I mean, you give us a puddle, we're going to... And so anyway, you get little boys out there and there's a creek, I mean, they're drawn to it almost magnetically. And so they're playing around this creek, and invariably, if there's some older kids, they're going to be jumping from one side to the other. And my boys know that I don't want them near this, but as they see these other kids, they start following them around, and pretty soon they're in line to start jumping the creek with the rest of them. And I tell them, boys, I don't want you in around that creek. And I explain why it is. And so they'll come back, they'll get back on the playground, and invariably one of them will come to me and say, but Daddy, it's okay. It's okay. These other boys, they're doing that, and they're not getting muddy. They're not getting poison oak. They're not falling and getting hurt on a rock. Daddy, it's okay. Now, what are they doing? Well, they're trying to pressure me into changing my assessment of what is and is not acceptable. And how are they doing it? Well, they're saying, first of all, everybody's doing it. But then they're also saying, not only is everybody doing it, but they're doing so seemingly without cost, without problem, so it must be okay. That's exactly what was going on in the life of God's people in the days of Moses and Aaron. They've come to Aaron and they're saying, hey, how about making us an idol? Moses, we don't know where he is. How about you make us an idol like we had back in Egypt? You know, you had seen those for years. Our grandparents, our great-grandparents, they had been exposed to this. The Egyptians are doing this. They're all doing it. And look how they seem to be doing. And since they're doing this and it's okay, it's not harming them, well, it must not be that bad, or it may not even be bad at all. And once his concept of what was right and wrong was successfully targeted, what does Aaron do? He follows the crowd instead of going against the tide. What happened for Aaron, for too many of us today, it happens exactly the same way, because Satan uses peer pressure to target our concept of right and wrong. But he also uses this tool to target our particular desires. Satan will target your particular desires. What's amazing to me in this account is the seeming lack of resistance that Aaron offers. I mean, there's no description of the conversation where Aaron says, oh, no, not on my watch. This won't happen. Over my dead body. It seems that there's no resistance. They come to him and they say, hey, Aaron, how about getting us something to worship? We need an idol of some sort. How about you making it for us? Okay, give me your earrings. I mean, there's no resistance, no hesitancy. He just goes along with them because they have come against him. And Satan was at work that day, but what exactly was his approach? Well, he not only targeted his concept of right and wrong, but also, it seems, Aaron's particular desires. Why did Aaron make this idol? You know, it's easy to say, well, because the people pressured him and he succumbed to the peer pressure. Well, obviously that's a part of it, but I would say to you that ultimately Aaron did this because there was a part of him that actually desired to do this in the first place. Now, I'm not suggesting that it was some burning desire that Aaron woke up every single morning thinking, oh, I got to have some golden calf to worship. But I believe that there was a part of him that desired to wonder, just to know for himself what might happen. Might some good come to us? Might we become like the next Egypt? He knew it was wrong, but there was a part of him that desired, that was curious. How might this work? He was wondering, I believe, is there perhaps something more to this? There was a place in Charlotte that I used to regularly go to eat, and there's some of them in Greensboro as well, the United Houses of Prayer, and I call them U-Hop. Instead of going, you go to U-Hop. Anyway, a lot of the U-Hops have in their facilities cafeterias that are open for lunch during the week. Some of them are even open for breakfast. But there was one near our church in Charlotte that had Tuesday through Friday. They had the cafeteria open, and it was all home cooking. It was absolutely delicious. You could get a meat, 2 vegetables, bread, and drink for $5, and it was excellent. And so on who knows how many occasions I went to the U-Hop to eat lunch. And I was such a regular. They knew me when I came in. They had given me tours. They knew where I was pastor. They knew all this stuff about me. And so one day I had gone in, and there were a couple of folks ahead of me in line. And every day there was a variety of different meats from which to choose. And on this particular day, the guy in front of me ordered the stewed chicken gizzards. I know, you're so anxious now to get to the Lord's Supper. I've whet your appetite with stewed chicken gizzards. Anyway, so he orders these stewed chicken gizzards, and as he has gone on the line, I asked the guy that's serving, I said, do chicken, because I've never had a gizzard, and I said, do gizzards taste like chicken livers? And I was asking that because I think chicken livers are among the most vile-tasting substances on the face of the earth. Some of you love them, and I don't know how you can eat that. I'd go hungry before I'd eat chicken livers. But anyway, I said, do these taste like chicken livers? He said, oh, no. These are a lot better than chicken livers. Do you want some? I said, no, I think I'm going to play it safe. I think I'm going to get the meatloaf. And so I get the meatloaf and I get the sides. He said, I'll tell you what, I'll give you some of these gizzards. I'll put them in a bowl just so you can taste them. And so I thought, well, that's fine. He's just giving them to me. I haven't lost anything. And so I get my tray with my food on it. I go and I sit down. I get my fork, and I'm going through this bowl. And I'm looking for the smallest gizzard I can find, because if you're going to lose, at least lose small. And so I found the smallest gizzard in my bowl, and I put it in my mouth, and then I chewed once. That was all I needed to know at that point to know I had been had with this chicken gizzard. In all honesty, I would have rather eaten the sole of my shoe after having walked through a cow pasture than to eat the rest of that bowl of gizzards. The question, though, is why did I eat chicken gizzards that day? Well, you could say it's because the guy serving, that he kind of pressured me that day. That he said, oh, here you go, they're good. And I suppose there was something to that. But that's not ultimately the reason that I ate those stewed chicken gizzards that day. The reason that I wanted to eat them, or that I ate them, is because a part of me just wondered. I was curious. I'd heard people say before they were nasty. I'd heard other people say they were good. I just wanted to know for myself. Why did I do this? Because there was a part of me that wanted to do this. Why is it that so many people succumb in the various avenues of peer pressure as professed believers in their life? Why is it that teenagers are so often, and at an epidemic level, even among professing believers, sacrificing their purity? Is it because of the pressure? Sure, that's a part of it, but also because there's a part of them that wonders, what's this really like? What does this really feel like? Why is it that people are getting addicted to drugs and addicted to alcohol? Is it because they said, hey, I really want that. I want to be strung out on cocaine, or I want to be an alcoholic. It's not because that happened. You could say it's because someone at a party pressured them and they got exposed to it. But yes, that was a part of it, but it was successful because there was a part of them that desired, that was curious, that just wanted to know themselves. Why did Eve succumb to Satan's temptation in the garden? First of all, he questioned what was right and what was wrong. He targeted her thought, her perspective of what was right and what was wrong. He said, did God really say that you shouldn't have this? If you eat this, you'll know as much as God knows. Your eyes will be opened. You'll be illuminated. You'll have the understanding and the wisdom of God. So why did Eve yield to it? Because there was a part of her that just wanted to know. How does Satan use peer pressure against us? He targets our concept of right and wrong, but then he targets our particular desires. Listen, there are things that I may be curious about that you're not. Things that you're curious about that I'm not. And so Satan customizes these attacks, and he brings people around us to say, hey, everybody's doing it. And then so many times we yield, we succumb because there's a part of us that just desires to know. There's a final way that he uses this tool, and that is that he will target your natural cowardice. He will target your natural cowardice. Aaron has had some pressure put on him. Whether it was significant or minimal, we don't know. But he wouldn't have done this just in a vacuum. He did so because of the prompting of the people. Hey, Aaron, how about making us an idol? Moses is gone. We don't know if anything has happened to him. We don't even know if he'll ever be back. So how about doing this for us? And so in verse 5, he has done so, and beyond that, we're told that he built an altar before it. So he's got this little golden calf that he's made, or we don't know exactly how big it was, but it takes a lot of earrings to make a cow, right? And so they've gotten this thing created, and then he's fashioned this altar before it. They're going to be offering sacrifices to this golden calf that Aaron has crafted out of their melted earrings. Well, this is going on. Moses is still up on the mountain with the presence of God, encountering God in a way that you and I can only imagine. And the Lord burdens Moses, hey, it's time to go down the mountain. And so Moses, he has, literally and figuratively had a mountaintop experience. Things are going great. He's had an amazing, unusual, once in a lifetime, once in a millennia experience, encounter with God. It's this great spiritual high. He walks down and he's got the stone tablets containing the 10 Commandments under his arms. He's all excited. I can't wait to tell people about what God has done, about all the things that He's told us and how He's revealed Himself to us. He's so excited. And when he gets down, he sees Aaron. He sees the people of God offering sacrifices, worshiping this silly little golden calf. Moses sees this and is incensed. And whether he just dropped them out of shock, we don't know, but he takes these tablets and he throws them on the ground in sheer rage. The tablets that God had inscribed the commandments on, they are busted, and Moses is furious. And he goes over to confront Aaron. How in the world did this happen? What is going on? I've been up on the mountain with God, and you're sitting down here with this golden calf, and people are worshiping it. What's going on? Have you lost your ever-loving mind? But notice what happens. Aaron says, don't let the anger of my Lord become hot. Easy, Moses. Settle down. Deep breath, deep breath. Let's talk here. And then he says this, you know the people. You know this ornery lot. You know what they're like. You know how they grumbled about the manna. You know how at one point when we were facing the Red Sea, they were ready to turn around and go back and be slaves again. Moses, you know these people. And he says, they said to me, make us gods that shall go out before us. What's he doing? He's saying it's their fault. And this is my favorite part of it. He says, so they gave their earrings to me. He said, I cast it into the fire, and this calf came out. That's like my dad with a computer. My dad, invariably something will go on. He said, it just did it. It just did it. I mean, that's what Aaron is saying to Moses here. I don't know what happened. They came to me, and you know these people, this ornery, God-forsaken lot, you know how they are. They came to me and said, I want you to make this idol. And all I did was say, okay, give me your earrings. And I threw them in the fire, and moo, here comes this cow. So what's he doing? He's doing what people have done since sin came into the world. He's shifting the blame. Do you remember when Adam and Eve have eaten of the forbidden fruit, and God comes to them and they're hiding, and God asks them, why are you hiding? And you remember what Adam said? It's this woman you gave me. Not only does he blame Eve, he blames God. It's her fault, and you gave her to me, so it's kind of your fault too. Isn't that exactly what we do? I mean, when we have been wrong, what we want is cover. What we want to avoid at all costs is personal accountability and personal responsibility for our choices. And so Aaron is saying, hey, it's these people's fault. It's them. They're the ones that they came after me. How many of you who are parents and have either you have teenagers or you have had teenagers, you caught your kids doing something and they said, well, hey, everybody else was doing it. What are they doing? They're shifting the blame. They're shifting the responsibility. It's not me. It was the crowd, and I just kind of got caught up in all this mess. And so it's not so much me. Well, I don't know if you have ever thought about this, but prior to dealing with this passage, I had not thought about it this way. Have you ever wondered why Satan likes to use peer pressure against us? Well, it's because though Satan doesn't have the knowledge of God, he does understand something that's important about us, which is the fact that we like cover. We don't like having our necks on the line. If we're part of a group, then that kind of makes it okay. And so we like to shift back, and we want to say, okay, it was everybody else was doing it, and so we just become part of everybody. And so that way it's not our neck, it's not our personal responsibility, it was just all of them. Satan loves to use this weapon against us because of the natural cowardice we have in our minds and in our hearts that we don't want to be held personally responsible. You've heard me say before that for years I have gone over the July 4th holiday week or weekend for a few days with my old Sunday school teachers to Cherry Grove. They've got a couple of houses there, and for years, since I was in their college and career class, they had taken our group down to the beach, and then that core group, even as many of us have gone on and moved on to other places and we've gotten families, that core group, they have invited every year to come back and stay at their houses at the beach completely free. And going to the beach over the 4th for free, that's a huge blessing. And so what we have as a group decided that we want to do each year is to come up with some way that we can say thank you, to give them a gift, to say we're grateful for what you've done in giving us this opportunity. The problem, though, is they don't need anything. My old Sunday school teachers, they're very wealthy, and anything that they would want, they've already gotten. Anything that they need, they've already gotten 2 of them. And so trying to come up with a gift for them, it's so challenging. A couple of summers ago, as we were getting ready to go to the beach, I was talking on the phone with some of the people that were going to be going down there, and we're talking about gift ideas. And everything that we're talking about, nothing seems to work. And so I don't know where this idea came from, but I suggested, why don't we get them one of those mosquito traps and killers? Because they have griped, whether in Charlotte or at their place at the beach, about the mosquitoes, and so maybe we can come up with some type of device that will help get rid of this. Because, what says we love you like, a mosquito trap, right? Anyway, so I have floated the idea at this point, and we're starting to talk about it. And it seems, though, that the group likes this idea. I mean, nothing else that we've come up seems to be anything that we want to sign off on. And so as it looks like we're getting ready to order one of these things, this is what I did. I said, now listen, if y'all want to do something else, it's completely okay. I don't have any pride attached to the purchase of this. Now, if y'all want to get this, we can get this. But if you think it's a good idea, we can get this. What am I doing? I'm trying to make this something that everybody else decides, so that if this thing is a bust, if it's a silly gift, well, it was their fault. They decided that this would be a good idea. Why was I doing that? Because I'm just like you. We're just like Aaron. There is this natural cowardice within us where we want to avoid having our necks on the line. And Satan's smart enough to know that. And so he comes to us through the avenue of peer pressure so that you can be part of the group. And if you're part of the group, then you can blame them. It's not you, it's them. But you know what? In God's eyes, the group stands accountable, and so too does the individual. Aaron was going to have to answer to God. He's in this passage answering to Moses because of this. But peer pressure was so successful because Satan targeted his natural cowardice, just like he does for me, just like he does for you. He targeted Aaron's particular desires, like he does for me, like he does for you. He comes to us through the avenue of peer pressure to soften our view and to affect our perspective of what is right and what it is wrong. And consequently, so many of us do exactly what Aaron did. We go along with the crowd. But you know what God's looking for? People that even if they stand alone, will stand against the tide. As seriously as I can say this, and with as much sincerity as I can muster, I want you to understand that God views following Him as serious business. You cannot follow Him and follow the crowd at the same time. Satan knows that, and so he is going to target you through the avenue of peer pressure. But if you know what he's up to, if you understand how he's using this, you can better withstand those advances and actually stand against the tide. For weeks now, we've been talking about a variety of different ways in which we're to be different. Different in our speech, different in our parenting, different in what we look at and entertain ourselves, different in our perspective of money, different in so many different areas. Ways in which we should be going against the tide, but too many of us, too many even here in this room, are not going against the tide. They're just going with the crowd. Again, God wants you to understand that following Him is serious business. If that is true, and it is, very simply, are you going with the crowd, or are you standing against the tide? Won't you bow your heads with me? Let me just ask you